Alright guys, welcome back to Underground Science. In this video we're going to be talking about lysosomal storage disorders. Specifically, we're starting a series, so we're going to do one lysosomal storage disorder in each video instead of just having a huge video and a bunch of findings for each one. Okay. It's these findings, the thing about lysosomal storage disorders are like each disorder, right, is mostly going to be like memorizing the high yield findings, okay, and like what enzyme's deficient, what lipid builds up, and things like that, okay? So let's go and get started. So first one we're going to be talking about is Tay-Sachs disease. It's autosomal recessive inheritance, all right? Okay, so this is important, okay? So what enzyme is deficient in Tay-Sachs disease? Okay, so this enzyme is called hexosaminidase A, okay? Hexosaminidase A. And what hexosaminidase A does is it breaks down GM2 ganglioside, okay? It breaks down GM2 ganglioside. Now, if it breaks it down, right, like if we know that hexosaminidase A breaks down GM2 ganglioside, but then we just said in Tay-Sachs disease that hexosaminidase A is deficient, right? So that means GM2 ganglioside is not broken down. So that leads to the next question, well, what lipid accumulates? Okay, well, we just said that hexosaminidase A breaks down GM2 ganglioside, which is a lipid, right? It's a type of lipid. If hexosaminidase A is deficient, we cannot break down GM2 ganglioside anymore, so GM2 ganglioside is the lipid that accumulates. Okay, so GM2 ganglioside is the lipid that accumulates in Tay-Sachs disease. Now, your lysosomes, so this accumulates in your lysosomes, okay? This lipid accumulates in your lysosomes, okay? So why is that bad? Because this can lead to a lot of high yield findings that we should know, okay? So in Tay-Sachs disease, it's important to know that if these GM2 gangliosides accumulate in the lysosomes of, like, let's say your brain cells, right? This can lead to neurodegeneration. This can lead to hyperreflexia. We also see hyperacusis and developmental delay, okay, in Tay-Sachs disease. Another important finding that we should know, right, is that if you look at the lysosomes, it'll look like onion skin lysosomes, okay? So it's going to be kind of like this, all right? So onion skin lysosomes, neurodegeneration, developmental delay, hyperacusis, hyperreflexia, right? And this is really important, which is why I wrote it in red, okay? In Tay-Sachs disease, you do not see hepatomegaly and you do not see splenomegaly, right? So that's basically you don't see enlargement of the liver and you don't see enlargement of the spleen. And the reason why we have to know this is because you usually see this compared to Niemann-Pick disease, because in Niemann-Pick disease, you do see hepatomegaly and splenomegaly, okay? But in Tay-Sachs disease, you don't, okay? So far we have neurodegeneration, hyperreflexia, hyperacusis, right? Developmental delay, onion skin lysosomes, no hepatosplenomegaly, okay? And then last but not least, we have a very important thing to know, which is in Tay-Sachs disease, you usually see a cherry red spot on the macula of the eye, okay? A cherry red spot on the macula of the eye. Okay, so let's see why this occurs. All right, so why is there a cherry red spot on the macula? Okay, so I tried to draw this, right? Hopefully it gets the point across. So this, I just drew a retina, right? Retina of the eye is the white circle. Then in the yellow circle, the area around the yellow circle, right, encompassed in the yellow circle, is going to be the macula, okay? So let's just go and write this out. So this white circle represents the retina. Then in the center of the retina, I try to draw the macula, right? Just a border that represents the macula. Then inside the macula, we know that we have structure called the fovea, right? And then inside the fovea, I drew this to represent the foveola, okay? The foveola, which is the center of the fovea. So the retina is right here in white, right? Then the macula, okay, is the center of the retina. Okay, the macula contains the fovea, And the fovea has a high density of cones, okay, which is responsible for color vision, okay? So, like, we know the macula and fovea, they're really important for high acuity vision, right? And so that's why the fovea, right, has the highest density of cones. And then inside the fovea, we have the foveola, okay? Now, the reason, let's dive into the reason of why we see a cherry red spot on the macula, okay? So here's why. So remember, in your retina, you have ganglion cells, retinal ganglion cells, okay? So we have retinal ganglion cells, right, in your retina, okay? Specifically, we'll see, so I'm going to represent these ganglion cells with the color green, okay? With this green color, okay? So let's say this is our retina, so we have our ganglion cells, right? We have our ganglion cells, and then inside your macula, you have your ganglion cells. Then inside your fovea, we have ganglion cells, right? But what happens is, when you go from your fovea to your foveola, so we have ganglion cells, a lot of ganglion cells, retinal ganglion cells on the outer part of the fovea. Then as you go more towards the foveola, you start having less and less ganglion cells, okay? Until you get to the foveola, which basically has no ganglion cells, because you want light to directly hit the cones, okay? Remember, the fovea is the highest density of cones. So that's why the foveola has no ganglion cells, or little to none, because that makes it easier for the light rays, right? For the light rays to come and go and hit the cones directly, okay? Hit the cones directly. So what happens is, in Tay-Sachs disease, remember we said there's a buildup of GM2 ganglioside lipid, right? That buildup occurs in lysosomes. Specifically, we see that buildup of GM2 ganglioside in the lysosomes of the retinal ganglion cells, okay? But remember what we said, there's no retinal ganglion cells in the foveola, right? The center of the fovea. So if GM2 ganglioside builds up in the retinal ganglion cells, right, in the lysosomes of the retinal ganglion cells, that means that, or what I should say is that what that leads to is these retinal ganglion cells, right, swelling up, okay? They swell because of the buildup of the GM2 ganglioside in the lysosomes of the retinal ganglion cells. They swell and they look pale, okay? They have a pale appearance to them. So look at where, like, let's say if we take the macula, right, this yellow circle, this yellow border, like, we have ganglion cells everywhere here, right? So that means that inside these retinal ganglion cells, we're going to have a buildup of GM2 ganglioside in the lysosomes, right? So then imagine all these retinal ganglion cells getting pale and swelling up, okay? But what happens is there's no retinal ganglion cells in the center of your fovea, your foveola, right? Because we said that's by purpose, so light rays can directly hit the what? The photoreceptors in your foveola, specifically the cones, right? So if there's no retinal ganglion cells in your foveola, there's no way that it's gonna look pale and swell up like it does on the other areas of your retina around it, right? Because there's no retinal ganglion cells in your foveola. Okay, so that means that this center part will remain red, right? However, everything surrounding the foveola will look pale and swollen, right? I mean, mostly what we should be focusing on, will look pale. It won't be red. That's why we said there's a cherry red spot on the macula. This is the spot, because it has no retinal ganglion cells, so there's nothing to swell, there's nothing to look pale, right? And it looks red because underneath this we'll have the choroidal vasculature, the choroidal blood vessels, right? And because you don't have any retinal ganglion cells in your foveola, it's already a thin retina. There's the retina in the foveola is pretty thin already, so, and the choroidal blood vessels are underlying it. So that's why you'll have a red appearance here, but then because you have retinal ganglion cells everywhere around it, those retinal ganglion cells will have a buildup of GM2 ganglioside, which will lead to the swelling of those retinal ganglion cells, and it will lead to a pale appearance of those retinal ganglion cells, which will make everything around it look pale, but the center will remain red, which is the cherry red spot on the macula that we refer to in Tay-Sachs disease. Okay? So I may have explained that like maybe too much or something, but hopefully, that made a little bit of sense, okay, of why we see a cherry red spot on the macula, okay? So that's basically Tay-Sachs disease and all the important stuff we need to know. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video when we'll talk about another lysosomal storage disease, all right? Or lysosomal storage disorder, okay? So yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys in my next video.